So, Lone Rider here. And like many Americans, I'm kind of perplexed by some of the words coming out of Ilhan Omar's mouth in the Congress. This is a lady who has a history of saying things that range from, possibly offensive or anti-Semitic to just illustrating sort of like a general disconnect from her audience and from history and from reality that I find alarming. Right? And I do have to wonder about not only why she does this, but also how some people are reacting to it as well. So the latest attempt for her to shove her foot firmly down her own mouth was a statement she made describing the terrorist attacks on September 11th, 2001. She started off by describing it as, well, some people did some stuff, and then it got worse from there. Just kind of dismissing the whole thing as, oh, no big deal, and whatever. Well, I don't know exactly how old this lady is, so maybe she's not old enough to remember. And I know a lot of the young people that tend to vote for people like her definitely aren't old enough to remember. Hell, it's 2019, so some of them might not have been born in '01. But as somebody who was there for this, let me tell you, it was not fun, okay? The closest way I can describe it, if you weren't there and you haven't seen any of the video footage of the terror attacks, and the damage that was done, and the people running, and the buildings collapsing, and the Pentagon on fire, and airplane wreckage in a field. If you want to know what it was like to be there, go watch an old movie where, like, monsters attacked a city or aliens invaded, like Godzilla or Independence Day, okay? It was like being in a situation like that. It was frightening in a very intense way, okay? I was in college at the time. I was fairly young. I was in New Jersey. But from where I was, if I went up on some of the hillsides or some of the overlooks, I could see the New York City skyline. And I remember going up to one of the parks where they used to have a lot of mountain bike trails and stuff, going up there and standing on one of the hillsides at one of the overlook spots and looking across the distance at the New York City skyline, where part of it was on fire. There was a big pall of smoke hanging over the area. And there were fighter planes, which I could see with my own eyes from where I was, flying over the city in, patrol patterns. Fighter planes flying over an American city within eye shot where I was standing. Many of my classmates at the school had family who worked in New York City or lived there. I had a good friend of mine whose uncle was in the Pentagon when it was hit. He was fine, but we didn't know that for a long time. Obviously, he was very distressed. My father was in New York that day, and he still won't talk about the details of what he saw. It was a tragedy, and to try and downplay the evil of this type of thing, the evil of this sort of an attack on civilian centers by, let's face it, by terrorists, right? That's what we're talking about here. I don't care how you downplay it, whether it's people trying to use phrases like man-made disasters, which some politicians are known for doing, or whether it's somebody like Ilhan Omar, just, oh, some people did some stuff. And you do realize you're an elected official in America. Your audience, people all over the world might be hearing what you're saying, but your immediate audience is other Americans, many of who are old enough that they were around at the time, and they remember. And what they remember does not square with the demeaning, insulting, and dismissive way in which you're describing these attacks. And shame the F on you, okay? I could think of a lot of ways to describe what happened on September 11th, 2001, but some people did some stuff is not one of them, okay? That statement alone and the tone and the attitude with which it was delivered illustrates that you not only don't care about your country, you don't care about your constituents. You do not deserve to be an elected official in this nation, okay? Now, that said, let's wonder why, right? Why does a person with this dismissive attitude to the murder of thousands of her fellow Americans get elected to high office in this country. Why? Why is that? And it's very easy to point to demographics and say, well, the younger people traditionally vote for lefties, and a lot of the younger people at this point in time either don't remember 9/11 or weren't around for it. Because, I mean, it's 2019. Some people who are old enough to vote might not even have been born yet. But that's the easiest potential explanation. It doesn't involve a lot of soul searching. It doesn't involve asking a lot of hard questions about what people believe and what they advocate and why. And I think it's almost a cop-out to just say, well, young people tend to vote for folks like Omar, and a lot of the young people at this point in time weren't around them. Yes, that's true, but does it really explain this sort of thing? I don't think so. I think there's been an ideological shift. Certainly we know politics has gotten more and more extreme over the years, but I do have to think that there's also been something that's lost, right? And it's a degree of respect and a degree of regard for other people, for their lives, for their freedom, for their very existence. And to just dismissively say something like that, the way she said it about people who were killed violently. Lady, are you out of your mind? Have you... This is the kind of reaction you would expect to hear from somebody who had conceptually no understanding of what happened on September 11th, 2001. However, that's a part of this country's history, and not only a very big part, but a very recent part. All right, we're not talking about knowing the intimate details of some, offensive on some small, tiny island during the Second World War, or the details of some battlefield from the War of 1812. We're talking about something that happened less than 20 years ago. If you don't even understand the significance of that event and the impact it had, then something's wrong with you, okay? Or something's wrong with how you think, right? Now, it's a free country. She's free to say whatever she's going to say, within the framework that applies to all of us. I mean, you can't libel somebody, you can't threaten somebody, you can't incite violence. But yeah, generally speaking, you can say whatever you want, or you should be able to. So I'm not saying she shouldn't be allowed to say this, but what I'm asking is, what does her saying this say about her, right? And then what does the fact that a person who's saying this was elected to Congress say about us as a country now versus maybe earlier periods in history? This is just, even the most controversial political figures or politicians that people love to hate, right? Whether you're talking about the current president or whether you're talking about, Obama, or whether you're talking about Hillary or Sanders or Ron Paul or whomever, people that you either really like them or you really don't. You either really approve of them or you really don't. People who are like flashpoints for emotional reactions. Even these people never dismissed the mortal and emotional impact of the 9/11 attacks. Even they were never just like, well, some people did some things. It's no big deal that all these thousands of people got crushed to death and burned alive. And yeah, it is a big deal. If you can't see that, like I said, there's something wrong with you. And I think that says there's something wrong with us for putting you in Congress. Now, I didn't put her in Congress. I didn't vote for this lady. But I got to wonder about the people who did, right? Based on how she's acting and what she's saying. And yes, she has a right to say whatever she's going to say. Again, it's a free country in that sense. She has a right to make asinine and senseless statements, all she wants. But then the rest of us also have a right to allow that to affect how we view her, right? I mean, you can make asinine statements, it's your right. But at some point, it's also my right to look at you and say, the hell's wrong with you, lady? Like, are you out of your mind? And describing the terrorist attack of September 11th, 2001 is also, people did some stuff. I are you like? Is this for real? Is this a belated April Fool's joke? I can't believe a grown adult anywhere in this country would talk about it like that, unless maybe I don't know, maybe they hate this country. But you know, I can't imagine we'd elect somebody who actually hates America to the American Congress. Well, actually, wait, let me think about that for a second. On second thought, maybe that is a possibility, right? But at the end of the day, you know, this person's in Congress. They're going to continue to make statements like this. Obviously, her political opponents are also going to continue to try and make hay with the results of her statements. But the point is, beyond the politics, left, right, Democrat, Republican, is there something more at work here? Is there something wrong with the person who dismisses the mass murder of thousands of Americans in one fell swoop by a party of terrorists as, well, some people who did some stuff, right? And a lot of people, I think, have been loath to criticize some of Omar's more outlandish and reprehensible statements because they're afraid somebody will point the finger at them and accuse them of being like Islamophobic or something. I think a better question we have to ask is, Omar Americanophobic, right? Does she, if not necessarily hate America, does she have some kind of a problem with it? Because I can't think of anybody who doesn't have a problem with this country who would be okay talking about the September 11th terror attacks the way she did, right? Then again, of course, I was there for this, right? I was there for this. But I don't think you should have to have been there for something horrible like that to understand the significance of it. I wasn't around for the Second World War, but I sure as hell understand the significance of the Holocaust. You don't have to have been put in Auschwitz to know that it was, you know, a massive, horrible thing. I wasn't around for, you know, the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, but a president getting assassinated is horrible. We can all kind of agree on that, right? You don't have to have been there to see it. In this case, I was there to see 9/11, but at the same time, you shouldn't have had to have been, right? And I don't know. Maybe it's how the topic is discussed. Maybe people have downplayed it over the years. Either out of, I don't know, maybe they're afraid people will call them Islamophobic too, or maybe people just got sick and tired of talking about it because it was depressing. So now the thing is to try and minimize it, and well, then younger people who weren't around for it aren't getting the real impact of what it was like, you know. And to me, there are some things that are indicators, that are like pointers, right? They don't necessarily prove anything. They don't necessarily make a case for one thing or another, but they draw your attention like a neon sign. And somebody, for example, being dismissive of a person's constitutional rights, that always causes like alarm bells, you know, a light bulb goes off in my head, something, keep an eye on that person, you know, they don't respect the Constitution. Somebody who makes a racist or a bigoted statement, you know, something goes off in my head, says, keep an eye on that person. They've got some ideas, you know, they've got some bad ideas. Somebody dismisses the murder of thousands of Americans on September 11th, 2001 as, oh, some people did some stuff, no big deal. Again, that's an indicator, that's a pointer. It doesn't necessarily prove anything one way or the other, but it draws your attention and it makes you, my first reaction when I hear a person make a statement like that, who's not mentally impaired in some way, is, what the hell is wrong with you, right? And again, I think we could ask, from that we could ask the question, what the hell is wrong with all those people who put her in Congress? Just a thought, and people like her. Because it's really, at the end of the day, isn't about Ms. Omar. This is about how people's attitudes have changed over the years, and possibly for the worse, and what can we do to maybe correct that downward slide, right? A country that hates itself and dismisses the murder of its own citizens has some troubles ahead, right? Unless it nips it in the bud. Well, round her out.